Hello everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for February 24th through March 2nd, 2025. So we have I say just, as in yesterday, Mars is now direct. So that's something that we have been working through over the last 2.5 months. It's something that really will carry us into March, along with some other things. And we talked about this last week, but this idea that we have been working on our Mars for the last 2.5 months since December 6th. And that means to reconnect more with our desires, our wants, our needs for action, to move forward, to stand on our own 2 feet, to have courage and bravery. And these are all Mars terms. But now that Mars is direct, it doesn't mean that our lives were on hold over the past 2.5 months. But it's just to note as we start the week together, that how are you feeling? Are you feeling this pent up energy? Have you been feeling a little bit testy, or now do you feel that you can sort of move forward confidently, or did you have a lot of light bulbs go off over the past 2 months? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But before we get too far into things, my name is Katie Sweetman, and every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. So we sort of just remind everybody, we look at astrology not as sort of this thing that's unfolding and it's already been decided, but sort of this idea about time and how do we live time, and to look at each of the planets and each of the zodiac signs as little keys, little things for us to discover, to reveal, and to start to map out a larger picture and framework for our lives. Because I know I've said this previously, the zodiac is the wheel of life. We start with Aries, we end with Pisces. And so for those that have been following along, we are in Pisces season. We've been in Pisces season since February 18th. And Pisces, as I just said a few moments ago, is the last sign of the zodiac. So we are in a season that brings us to the end of the astrological year. And because the zodiac is the wheel of life, it allows us to sort of come to this space that is about endings, things wrapping up. We have gone beyond Aquarius, which is the 11th sign, and Aquarius is more worldly in the sense that it talks about our real world, even though it's more intellectual and systems. And we come to Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, which is a water sign. It's about feeling and intuition, compassion. And we talked about this also last week, that Pisces is the two fishes. And there's a lot of deep symbology in all the animals of the zodiac. In the case of Pisces, because Pisces is what's called a mutable sign, it goes along with Gemini, the first mutable sign. Pisces is the last mutable sign, and it talks about the duality of life. In Pisces, the duality of life, the two fishes, is we are both material and we are spiritual. We are both physical and we are non-material or emotional, depending on what you believe in. And so I wanted to sort of make these points is because we all have our relationship with the energies of Pisces. Pisces, it represents dreams, it's illusions. On a very sort of simple day-to-day level, Pisces is I'm getting ready to fall asleep, and then there's sort of that liminal space before we wake up, before we're fully awake. And that's also Pisces. There's a sense of movement between spaces of consciousness, between spaces that are both conscious and unconscious, here, not here, but also this space that we can tap into that is somehow beyond our world. Because when you open up your eyes every morning, God willing, that you sort of step into the energies of Aries, because Aries is new beginnings. That new beginning could be the day, that new beginning could be the first of spring, that new beginning could be the start of the zodiac year when the sun goes into Aries. So, but we're at the end of the zodiac. And I realize that Mars is now direct. There's a sense of that we're still trying to find that sense of moving forward and taking action. And we also have Mars direct with a trine to Saturn, so we can be a bit more focused as we go into the end of the zodiac. So this week, it is the dark of the moon. What does that mean? Every lunar month is about 4 weeks. And we have the new moon, and that new moon takes us throughout the 4 weeks. And then the last couple of days before the next new moon is something called the dark of the moon. Because if you search for the moon this time of the lunar cycle, you're not going to find it. The moon is obscured by the shadow of the earth, because the earth is passing in front of the sun. And so this idea that we are able to hear things more clearly, our dreams are more intuitive, they're more vivid, we're able to listen to ourselves. And I spoke a lot about this last week, this idea to be in the listening of what this astrology means for you, because it's not one size fits all. And to listen for the stories, listen for your own relationship with Pisces. Maybe it's not easy for you to get into those quiet spaces. Maybe it's very easy for you to get into those quiet spaces. And so again, that's why with the zodiac as the wheel of life, we come to this season to renew ourselves and to replenish ourselves with the energies of Pisces. Again, both an otherworldly sign, both a sign that talks about the duality of life, but it's also a sign, because it's a water sign. Again, it's a water sign that is meant to nourish us. The water signs nourish us. It does not literally food, but it nourishes us emotionally. It nourishes us through connection. It nourishes us through this ability to take what we need and to move on to the next chapter. It nourishes us even spiritually, or spirits, whatever you believe in. So here we are. We're going to have a new moon this week. This new moon, on one hand, brings to a close a lunar month that began on January 29th. This new moon that's on February 27th, ironically, because we're at the end of the zodiac, it is a renewal, it is a new beginning, but at the same time, we are in Pisces season. We've come to the end of the zodiac. And in fact, at the time of the new moon, there are 5 planets in Pisces. That is actually not common. That's a lot of planets in one sign. And if you count the north node of the moon, that's 6. I realize the north node of the moon is not a planet, but that is 6 planets, quote unquote, in Pisces. So there's a lot of energy that's being directed towards Pisces for a moment. So this is your homework, should you want it. What is your relationship with Pisces? Because I know, we're all human beings. We get to these different seasons and people are like, oh, I don't like Gemini, I don't like Scorpio, I don't like Pisces. It's an archetype and an energy. I realize there are people who are these signs, and you may even be, I love all the signs, but you may even be one of these signs. But the idea is to not to sort of take the personality out of it. That's a lot of what our lens of astrology is, at least in modern times. It's through this idea of astrology as personality. That is just one layer of astrology. And so part of my work is to really open you up to a deeper, a richer lexicon of looking at the different signs and looking at the different planets, so that they can hopefully, I hope, open up something for you. And so with this season, what comes to mind? Do you feel this need to be more Piscean, to be on retreat, to rest, to get quiet? Maybe you're asking yourself, how do I fulfill my life? How do I make more meaning and purpose in my life? Because that's Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is this planet that wants us to make our worlds bigger. It is, as the ruler of Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, it is making our world bigger externally. We travel, we go on grand voyages. with Jupiter in Sagittarius. But in Pisces, also ruled by Jupiter, the grand voyages are within. They're into quiet spaces. And so it's another question for you to sort of reflect on: what is your relationship with quiet spaces? Because Jupiter is trying to, in Pisces, is trying to bring you, and certainly 6 planets, including the North Node, is trying to bring you into these quiet spaces over the next 4 weeks. So before we get to that Pisces new moon, again, we're wrapping up a lunar month that began on January 29th. And then we have this new moon that does a couple of important things. One, of course, it's a new moon. It's the energy of renewal. It brings us to the last sign of the zodiac. But more importantly, it is a new moon that brings us to eclipses. This new moon on the 27th isn't an eclipse, but in a way it's sort of like an eclipse by association, if that's even a real term. This idea that the new moon opens up a lunar month that then is marked by a lunar eclipse on March 14th. So this is a lunar month that a lot of things may start to happen, and we've gone through eclipses before, so you know what I'm talking about. The eclipse is an eclipse season, and so you could say we are in eclipse season. I would argue we are in eclipse season. We've been in eclipse season pretty much since the sun went into Pisces, but with the new moon, we are definitely in eclipse season starting this week. And it says that over the next 4 weeks, this is a time of transition, a time of inflection. Inflection meaning that things sort of come in and out of our life, that there's sort of this bend, this idea that time is not linear, it's a spiral, and you start to see that with eclipses, and it creates almost like these portals. And I don't use that term lightly, in the sense that it seems like there's a sense of things coming in and out of our lives. All you have to do is go back to September, October 2024. We had eclipses September 17th, followed by that was a lunar eclipse, followed by a solar eclipse on October 2nd. Before that, we had eclipses late March of 2024, April 8th of 2024. That was the solar eclipse that was visible in the United States, Canada, and parts of Mexico. Before that was the eclipses of October of 2023, October 14th of 2023. There was another eclipse at the end of October that was the last in another cycle. And then, we go before that and before that. And so this idea that every 6 months, time renews itself. Time marks different chapters. And so, again, here we are, end of the zodiac. We're coming to the end of one arc of time, the time of the sun going through all the zodiac signs. But at the same time, we are going into a chapter of time that will be marked by a solar eclipse on March 29th in Aries. This is going to be the last eclipse in Aries. We've had eclipses in Aries since 2023. So we are coming to the end of a chapter, but at the same time, this eclipse says over the next 6 months, April 2025, so March 2025, April 2025, all the way into September 2025, we are really sort of on a larger level working through the archetype of Aries. Previous 6 months, it was the archetype of Libra. And so for me as an astrologer, eclipses are very, very important. They do a few things. Number one, they mark the major chapters and milestones of your life. Everybody who's listening, whether it's the recording, whether it's live, you all have had major milestones in your life. These are the things that, go into the CV, so to speak, the resume, so to speak, of your life. You've had marriages, you've had births, you've had moves, you've had jobs, you've had this, you've had that. These are the things that really mark the timeline of our life. We had eclipses in Pisces and Virgo back in 2015-16, 2006, 2007, 1997, 1998. I think it was like 1988, 89. Don't quote me on that, but I think that was the previous cycle. But this, we can sort of look back to these larger weavings in the tapestry of our life. And so when we go into eclipse season, we also meet up with the lunar nodes. And I know a lot of you may or may not know what the lunar nodes are, but for me as an astrologer, and I do work with clients, some of you are my clients, some of you watch me on the recording every week, and I actually really love sitting down with people and showing them, revealing to them their astrology chart, because it's a space of time that was made for you. And that space has an arc. That space has a path to it. And it's not for me to tell you what your path is, but it's to illuminate the lunar nodes, because the lunar nodes, these 2 points in the sky that make eclipses happen, they were in 2 signs of the zodiac when you were born. So the lunar nodes mark this path in your life between 2 signs and between 2 areas of your own personal astrology. It could be relationship, it could be career, it could be something else. It depends on the person. And so the lunar nodes really give some of the richness and depth to anybody's personal astrology. So of course you can always book a consultation with me at empoweringastrology.com. But that said, now, depending on, as opposed to when you were born, the lunar nodes are in Virgo, South Node in Virgo, North Node in Pisces. And so the path, the arc that we are all collectively walking on is Virgo, Pisces. These are 2 signs of the zodiac, in addition to everything that I said about Pisces, that talk about the helping and healing signs. And so that South Node in Virgo says that there is a well of memory and instinct for us to work through with Virgo. Virgo is ritual, it's craft, it's practice, it's service, particularly service to others, sort of real world service. Virgo is an earth sign. It's very practical. I actually really love Virgo. I think it's a very underrated sign, and it keeps the world moving. But Virgo, South Node, that means that we need to reevaluate our relationship with Virgo. How do we show up? What are the day-to-day practices? Do we honor our commitments? Or do we have a sense of duty and responsibility? What do we owe to ourselves, and what do we owe to other people? How do we work together? How do we serve, but taking a leaf out of Libra, the next sign over, and do it in balance? It's a natural give and take. Virgo are your nurses, they're your doctors, your physicians. These are the people that really help to manage things, and it really talks about operations in general as a sign. Virgo Pisces, if Virgo is physical healing, our day-to-day life, then Pisces is spiritual healing in our spiritual lives, whatever that means to you. And so this is a season where we are walking that path, and to go from Virgo to Pisces is sometimes very difficult. Why? Because Pisces requires a leap of faith. It requires us not to leave our agency behind, or to leave even our grounding behind, but it means that we need to go into a space that Virgo can't comprehend. It's not rational, it's not analytical, you can't even touch it. And so we're walking this path where we're, especially again, 6 planets in Pisces, including lunar nodes, where we are going into Pisces. And Pisces, it's just a thing about things that are subjective, like even using metaphor and symbolism in astrology. And I tried to speak to people like, it could be this, it could be this. It's because Pisces is subjective. It sort of exists in the gray areas. And so, when I speak in metaphor, when I speak in symbols, it's so that something begins to reveal itself to you. And Pisces is mysticism. And mysticism can't be taught. It can't be analyzed. It's not in a book. Mysticism has to reveal itself to you in those quiet spaces. And so again, using this Pisces lunar month that starts February 27th, 9 degrees of Pisces is the degree of the new moon. It says, how do I allow myself to walk this path into Pisces? Again, not always easy. Yes, we do need Virgos in our life. So I have a North Node in Virgo. I have Saturn in Virgo. So I do know a fair bit about Virgo. I have a South Node in Pisces. So I have the reverse nodes. And so how do we walk this path? But at the same time, how do we find the balance between heaven and earth? Because it can't be so Piscean that it loses its grounding. It can't be so Virgo that we lose the magic. So I said this last week, I'll say it again. How do we find the magic this Pisces season? But at the same time, keeping our feet completely on the ground. So to get you ready for this eclipse season, every eclipse season, I typically do a webinar. I'm doing a webinar on March 5th. This will be at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's about 2 hours, and we will get into the mystical and magical of Pisces, but also into the rational and analytical of Virgo, and also talking about what this Aries new moon will be, this Aries solar eclipse on March 29th, especially with Mars square and Mars direct. It's going to be a very Mars next 6 months. But that said, this you can go to empoweringastrology.com. Even the link is in the show notes, and we will talk about especially what this Virgo Pisces path will mean even into the beginning of 2027, because we have eclipses in Virgo and Pisces. Certainly next 6 months from now, this will be September of 2025. And then we go 6 months after that, we'll have another round of eclipses, although we'll have a little bit of the Aquarius Leo starting to peek in, and what this can mean for us, especially for your sun signs. So anyway, so that is your, I do, before I forget, so I will add a couple of things. We do, speaking of eclipses, we do have Mercury making a conjunction to Saturn this week. This will be tomorrow, February 25th. It's a bit of a precursor to this eclipse that we're going to have on March 14th. Again, just be in the listening to see what are the themes that are beginning to emerge in your life. The other thing is that with Mercury conjunct Saturn, it's typically an energy where we need to be accountable, we need to be mature, we need to make decisions, we need to say yes to the things that we need to say yes to, we need to say no to the things that we need to say no to. And then the other thing is that, and I'll talk more about this next week, but Venus is turning retrograde. So, Mars did its retrograde, and now it's passing the baton to Venus. It happens. The personal planets, every planet actually, except for the sun and moon, turns retrograde. It just means that we are doing some personal work as we start the year. Mars is that energy of drive, power, and action, forward movement. Venus is how do we negotiate? How do we compromise? How do we socialize? Without Venus, it would be all Mars. I'm taking this. Venus is like, whoa, wait, what about other people? So Venus helps us to take understanding that there are other people around us. They may have needs. We need to compromise. It's also the planet of beauty. It's relationships. It's connection. It's also value and worth. It is the ruler of Taurus, which is an earth sign. So it also talks about our material lives, but even our self-worth. So Venus will turn retrograde at 10 Aries, and this will be this weekend on March 1st. So we'll talk about that next week. So let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet, and Mars is now direct. So let's have a little bit of a check-in. How do we feel? Because it has been 2.5 months of needing to go back on something, needing to rewind on something, and I spoke about this pretty much the past however many weeks, because you have essentially had Mars opposite Pluto throughout this whole retrograde. Mars is still opposite Pluto, even though you may argue they're out of sign at the moment, but Mars will return to Leo in April, and Mars will make its final opposition to Pluto on April 26th. My point is, keep in mind that really the first 5 months of the year, essentially, and this even goes back into 2024, is a time for you to do some sort of personal transformation. Again, this is going to be very personal to your life. It's for you to sort of feel into how that means for you. If that means changing your relationship with desire or power, how you show up, the things that you really steer your life towards. And, to be fair, especially because it's a Pisces new moon this week, we've got 5 planets plus the North Node. That makes 6 points in Pisces at the moment. Pisces is something called your 12th sign. This is a time where things are both coming to an end, and yet ironically, especially with that Aries new moon solar eclipse on March 29th, things are coming to a new chapter, a new beginning. So you're sort of in between 2 places at the moment. Use this time wisely. The idea is that with Saturn, I've said this before, with Saturn in your 12th, let go of the things that you do not want to bring with you into the middle of 2025 when Saturn goes into Aries, and certainly into 2026 when Saturn returns to Aries. That said, listen very carefully to the introduction that I did, because it gave you a lot of keywords for Pisces: getting quiet, listening, dreaming, intuitions, but also to take a look at your illusions. With the energy of Pisces and even the Virgo new moon the Virgo full moon in 2 weeks, it's just to sort of look at your life in a broader lens. This idea of service and helping people. What are your duties and responsibilities? And how do you perhaps clear space and bandwidth in your life so that you can be of greater service? Taurus, Venus is your planet. And so Venus is preparing to turn retrograde this week. So where's Venus right now? Venus is in Aries. Aries is something called your 12th sign. So this is going to be a little bit of an interesting time for Taurus. This will take you into the middle of April and really, honestly, into May as well, your birthday season. Because Venus is going to be in a very quiet space, by and large, for the bulk of this time. It will go back to Pisces, but we'll talk about that, down the line. But the idea is kind of like Pisces season in a way. Take notes, because with Venus in Aries, even though it's not Pisces, it's Aries, but it's your 12th, this is a time for you to get quiet. This is a time for you to go on retreat, to let go, to think about the things that you do not want to bring with you into the next cycle, whether that's your birthday, whether that's another thing that indicates a new cycle in your life. Typically, when Venus is in the 12th, we need to rest. We need to retreat. But it's to sort of feel how this is showing up in particular in your life. That said, Venus retrograde means that, not that you are retrograde, but the energy of your sign is retrograde. Retrograde means going back to the past. It's retreat in the sense of like retracing your steps. Also a retrograde, because it's a 40-day process. There's a lot of symbology to Venus retrograde, on a deeper sort of spiritual level. And the retrograde allows you to rework something, to go into a receptive or yin phase of energy as opposed to active forward movement of energy. So yin is intuitive, it's quiet, it's the night, it's not day. And so in your own ways, feel into this energy and how it's showing up in your life. That said, a lot of planets in Pisces, 5 plus the North Node, which makes 6. Pisces is something called your 11th sign. The 11th sign is our friends, our community, our social groups and networks. And so there's just a lot of activity in a space that for some Tauruses may be social. Ironically, because Venus is your planet and it's in the 12th, which is quiet and sometimes even solitary. The 11th is also looking ahead towards the future, trying to figure things out, our hopes and our wishes and our dreams. And so maybe you're trying to really think about the future and sort of the future that you want to make in your life. Maybe you are getting more into social issues and social causes. Saturn is there as well. And we will, certainly have eclipses. We'll have a lunar eclipse in 2 weeks. And that lunar eclipse will talk about, identity. Who are you? What's your place in the world? What's your role in the world? And maybe the things that need to be, clear some space for the next chapters and cycles in your life, Taurus. Gemini, Mercury is your planet, and it's currently with this like lineup of planets in Pisces at the moment. And this week in particular, Mercury is making a conjunction to Saturn, and then at the end of this week, Mercury does make a conjunction to Neptune. So what does this mean? First, Pisces is something called your 10th sign. So this is a time in your personal calendar where it's about your worldly life, your career, the title after your name, the role and the function that you play in this world. Maybe this is a time where you're in a little bit of a spotlight. Certainly the new moon on the 27th says for the next 4 weeks, it's about your professional life, your public life, your worldly life, and the role that you play in the world. Mercury conjunct Saturn this week says there's something where you need to either stand in a role of maturity and responsibility. You need to be a leader. For some Geminis, it is to take your voice seriously. Choices, you're putting your words out there. It's also to be sort of the master of what you are saying, what you are thinking, and how you are communicating in the world. This may show up again in your professional life. Maybe you need to say something. Maybe you need to speak about something. Mercury is also the planet of choice. And so Mercury conjunct Saturn can sometimes say that you need to make a serious decision or a serious choice this week. For some Geminis, the Saturn conjunction can create a line or a boundary because Saturn symbolically represents the borders and boundaries that are inherent to our physical plane. And sometimes we cross those boundaries, and there's the positive crossing of boundaries in the sense that we transcend something that limits us, and then there's the negative crossing of boundaries. We've crossed something, we've transgressed something. It's to sort of feel into how this is relevant and all these different permutations for you. But again, this new moon, it opens up a period of the next 4 weeks and beyond that's about eclipses. With the lunar eclipse in 2 weeks, and I'm saying this now because you may start to see movements in the home environment, family, home, maybe some of these decisions this week do talk about your living situation and needing to make some decisions about your living situation. Again, with the Mercury conjunct Neptune later this week, it is a very intuitive, can be very spiritual influence for Gemini. It can be very mystical, magical, but it's also a reminder to keep your feet firmly on the ground and to make sure that there are no illusions. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and the moon is this week traveling from Capricorn, which is a relationship sign, going up to Aries, which is a sign of your career. So you're sort of spending this week starting with about people, your connections, relationships. Middle of the week, it may bring up some heavier emotions as the moon passes through Aquarius in advance of the new moon. And then Cancer, you have to understand that there are so many planets right now in something called your 9th. What is the 9th? I know we've been talking about this the past 2 years because Saturn's there. Saturn has been there since March of 2023. This is a time in your life in general where it's about figuring out what do you believe in, what do you stand for. For some Cancers, it's a very philosophical time. For some Cancers, they are teaching. They are teaching something that they know. They've accumulated wisdom and knowledge. Maybe they're publishing a book. Maybe they're doing a lot of public speaking. And for some Cancers, it's a little bit more like searching for something that's going to help explain things. And for some Cancers, it's a lot of travel and exploration, and even foreign travel and long distance travel. Search for how those different variations connect with your life, because it sort of says, especially as Mercury makes a conjunction to Saturn this week with the Pisces New Moon, for some Cancers, it is about education. You're planning the next steps in education. Maybe you're thinking about going back to school. For some Cancers, it's planning a trip. For some Cancers, it's about conviction. Like, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? But the 9th is where we need to make our world bigger. And so this is a call for you, Cancer, over the next 4 weeks for you to make your world bigger in some way. Oh, I will add Cancer because Mars is now direct in Cancer. Just a lot of energy in your sign at the moment. So the reminder is to harness Mars. Mars is a very physical planet. Mars gives you a lot of drive, a lot of power, a lot of energy. But Mars needs to be sort of like grounded and harnessed, and it's to sort of check in to see how you feel, because it might be stirring up a lot of energy. Maybe you have a lot to say. Maybe that's where all those ninth sign planets are coming in. Sometimes Mars is not a diplomat, but just remember everything in balance. So if you're really feeling that Mars, don't forget to sort of cultivate some diplomacy. Now we get to Leo. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and the sun is in Pisces. And so for you, Pisces is something called the eighth sign. We spoke about this last week when the sun went into Pisces. If the zodiac is the wheel of life, each sign represents a different space of life. It could be, and depending on what sign you are, in your case, Leo, when the sun is in Pisces, you've reached this eighth space, something that I call the eighth room. This is a space where we need to face ourselves. It's an emotional space, but it's also a space of alchemy. And this is the way that I frame it. Imagine a life where nothing happens. Imagine a life where you never look within and you never question yourself. Do you grow? Absolutely not. This week, especially with the Pisces New Moon, there are 6 planets here. I'm including the North Node. It's not a planet, but I'm including it like it's a planet. And so there's just a lot of energy and activity in this 8th room. So the question, Leo, is what do you do with it? Do you talk to a trusted confidant? Do you go to a therapist? Do you sit with yourself? Because it's a lot of inner examination, but not just, for nothing, because it can be very productive. Saturn has been there since March of 2023. So this is a larger space of your life that starts to wrap up this year, where it's about doing a lot of this emotional heavy lifting, and it's brought you at times to raw spaces. So with this new moon, sort of sit with it. Where is it taking you over the next 4 weeks? Because again, this space can be can bring a lot of personal alchemy. We take those things that we realize about ourselves and we transform them. The 8th is also a space of wealth, and from a traditional standpoint, wealth, shared assets, benefits. It's sort of finance and property, certainly shared finance and property. And so for some Leos, it is about money and income, property and assets and benefits. But if we sort of looked at it from a higher perspective, it's the role of the 8th that gives us true wealth, and it's not material wealth. So it's that inner work and that inner transformation, that inner alchemy that helps you to cultivate inner wealth. And that's the wealth that you bring with you. If we're going to go back to those 2 fishes of Pisces season, that's the inner wealth that you bring with you into the next life. Virgo, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is currently with a lot of planets in Pisces at the moment, and that is something called your 7th sign of relationships. Virgo, we've been talking about this for almost 2 years at this point. Saturn has been in your 7th sign of relationships since March of 2023. So 2 years. And so this has been a time to work on relationship. And of course, we all have our own lives. We all have our own stories, but we are all human beings. And because we're human beings, we need relationship and connection. I do not mean romantic relationships. Certainly, it could be a time for a serious romantic relationship, but we need to cultivate connection. And the beauty of this time, and sometimes not always the beauty of this time, is that it helps us to really strengthen the connections to people in our life. And I sort of made that little laugh for a moment, just because Saturn can sometimes weed out the things and even the people that are not really supporting our lives. it has been heavy lifting the past 2 years. And so that story is beginning to come to a close. But with this new moon, in a way, it's not a standalone new moon. It's part of this bigger story that you've been working through the last couple of years. And depending on the person, maybe even longer. Like it sort of connects to different things in the chart. Maybe you're born in the 1960s, the mid-1960s, and then you have Pluto and Uranus there, or then you have Saturn and Pisces in the mid-1960s. But so this is for you to sort of do that temperature read this week and over the next couple of weeks. Where's relationships for you? And Saturn, on one hand, says that we need to take our commitment seriously. We need to say yes to the right people. We need to say no to the right people, and to set the boundaries where we need to set the boundaries. Saturn also says cultivate serious relationship, meaning just relationship that has a lot of depth and feeling. Keep in mind, there will be a lunar eclipse in Virgo in 2 weeks, so you are sort of in the spotlight even as we start the lunar month. And we also have a Mercury conjunct Saturn this week, and this, in a way, it's like a precursor to that lunar eclipse. So Mercury governs you. Mercury conjunct Saturn says something wants to become real, something wants to take shape and form, but at the same time to set limit and boundaries and to sort of have a really clear-eyed view of what is going on in your life so that you can make the choices that are right for you. Libra, Venus is your planet, so it is going to turn retrograde on March 1st. And so that just says that the energy of your sign is going to be not working backwards per se. A retrograde is a yin phase of energy. It's not active, it's not forward movement. It's not yang, it's receptive, it's yin, it's about the past. It's why it's such a stereotype that when Venus turns retrograde, past lovers, past flames typically show up. It's not just Mercury retrograde, it's Venus retrograde too. And so Venus retrograde on some level is saying for you, Libra, you need to go back to the past. Venus is retrograde in Aries. So in this case, it is about relationships. It may be about past flames, or it may be something about a current relationship, romantic or otherwise. Because, and you know this as a Libra, that relationships are about interaction, socialization, connection, and on all levels and all forms. And so there is something that you're working back on. And I think even when Venus gets back into Pisces, I forget what date that is, it's in March. There are so many planets in Pisces right now. It's for you to, in a way, like start to pay attention to what's happening right now, because it might link back to relationships. Is there inequity in your relationship? Do you give? Are you a people pleaser, Libra rising, or Libra, or not? Maybe there's not all Libras. Or do you need to sort of reestablish some limits, some boundaries, some equilibrium in your relationships? All relationships, both lowercase r relationships and capital R relationships. There will be an Aries new moon eclipse in 4 weeks' time. This is a solar eclipse. This is the last eclipse in Aries. So we had one April 8th. We had one in, I think it was like April 20th of 2023. So whatever is happening has links back to the past 2 years. I guess it has been 2 years. So there is a sense of things needing to rebalance, to readjust. There is a sense of things needing to come to a closure. There is, ironically, at the same time, things coming to a new beginning. With the Pisces new moon, that said, Pisces is something called your sixth sign. So this could be a new moon period that just focuses on health and wellness, both your physical health and wellness, but even on the other end of the sky, there will be a Virgo lunar eclipse in 2 weeks. It could also be about spiritual health and wellness. And this includes attachments. And I'm just saying this in case this period talks about relationships and perhaps attachments and not the best attachments, or needing to let go of old patterns, because that full moon eclipse could be a great time to really sort of set some boundaries and to let go of something. But again, listen to what this time is trying to show you. It could be a time to clean up, to get organized, to be more of service, to help people, to follow through, to honor your commitments. And all of this is in advance, not just of Venus returning to Pisces, but even Saturn going into Aries on May 24th. And relationships are going to even be a bigger focus in the middle of 2025. So we'll talk more about that as we get closer. Scorpio. So Mars is now direct. So this has been a little bit of some navel gazing over the past, 2.5 months, because Mars has walked its way back from Leo, which is your career sign, but to something called your ninth sign. Now, Cancer is a fellow water sign, just like you, and water is about connection and emotionality. Cancer is about feeling and empathy, the past and memories, and sort of these really fundamental emotional bonds that we all need as human beings. But Cancer is also something called your ninth sign. So this has been, that's why I say a little bit of navel gazing, this has been since January 6th, a time to really reevaluate. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? The ninth sign is both our education, not elementary or middle school or high school education. It is like how we educate ourselves. It could be a higher degree, college, postgraduate, but it could also be this sort of larger question of how we educate ourselves. For some Scorpios, this has been a need to examine deeper values and how you communicate those values. What is right and wrong for you? Like, we all have that sort of inner compass, that inner sort of moral guide, that inner, like the little guidance in our ear. And that's something that could also connect to the ninth. And with Mars direct, there's a sense of like the energy is not receptive or reflective anymore. It's now active. So something wants to now act, hopefully not react too much. That said, and I've said this to Aries, and I'll say it to you because you're both ruled by Mars, keep in mind that basically the first 6 months of the year, I would say throughout, or even in maybe 5 months of the year, your planet is opposite Pluto. This is even going back to October and November and December 2024. It's a long stretch of time with Pluto. Even though the opposition is out of sign at the moment, Mars will return to Leo in April, and then on April 26th, you have the last opposition to Pluto. So just keep in mind that you're in a period that really is about 7 months, 6-7 months, where you're being reforged, reshaped. It's sort of doing that inner work so that something can come out of it. That's the really deep Pluto work. Speaking of water signs, there is a lot of stuff going on in Pisces at the moment. Pisces is something called your fifth sign. It is your creativity, is your passion, is your joy. It is the things that light you up and give you pleasure. So the question mark is, Scorpio, what lights you up? What gives you pleasure? You are already in a period of time with Saturn in Pisces where you need to take yourself and take your talent seriously. Listen for what's going on with this Pisces new moon, because it will be very subjective to you. Identity, self, how you express who you are, how you give space and bandwidth for the things that actually light you up and give you joy. Even though this is not an eclipse on February 27th, this new moon, it is bringing you into a month that is about identity. It is about self. It is about the role that you play in the world. It is how people see you. It is this dance with like the I and the individual, but also the greater whole and the people who are your friends, your community, etc. So this new moon again gets you back to you. And there is, this week, with Mars direct, you do have the support of Saturn. So there's this idea that this period, even with the eclipses, can be a very stabilizing time. But eclipses are eclipses, and so it says that March is going to be an inflection month for you, an inflection point for you, Scorpio. Sagittarius. So Jupiter is your planet and it's still doing its thing in Gemini. So This just continues to be, I was saying this to a Sag rising client, and I think even a Sag sun client, this continues to be a time when the 4 directions of your life are really active. What does this mean? The 4 directions of our life are symbolized by the 4 directions, by the 4 seasons. But you have your own personal 4 directions, your own personal seasons. It's reflected in your astrology. What are your 4 directions? The first is the I. Like, we all need a sense of I, individuality, being able to be self-reliant, to stand on our own 2 feet. But it's not just one, it's all the rest of them. It's also home, family, where is home and who is home, to feel like we belong someplace, that we have a place to call home, to settle down and to anchor in. The third point is relationships. We all need a sense of connection and relationship. We are human beings. That's what human beings are hardwired for. And this might be a time where relationships, whether lowercase r, capital R relationships, are really a focal point for you. Then there's the last point, which is the role that you play, the role that you play in the world, your sense of duty and responsibility to a larger framework. What are you growing up to become? What is that sense of maturity in your life? So I wanted to highlight that because that is all being pressed on at the moment. And when you look back at 2024 and 5, you will maybe see a time that's really shaping you, that's really kind of getting you to either become the person that you're going to become or to mature into this next phase and chapter of your life. So with this Pisces new moon, it puts the focus on home and family. Either where is home and who is home, your living situation, maybe you're planning on a move, maybe it's about a parent, maybe it's about a family member, maybe you're thinking about starting a family. And that new moon is got Jupiter square Saturn. So Jupiter square Saturn again says something over the next 4 weeks either wants to take shape and form, or you need to take more responsibility. It could be responsibility in the home, responsibility in relationship, or you need to get very clear about what you want, what you are building, what you are constructing. You need to participate because time is time. Time will age us. Time moves on. And it's not to sort of be, taken by time, but it's also to be a participant in the time of your life. This new moon will bring you into eclipse season. And so the Mercury-Saturn conjunction this week, the 25th, tomorrow, is a precursor to this new moon. It's about your career, it's about relationships, it's about duties and responsibilities, and it's about taking some next step up. And that next step might be more evident as you get into eclipse season in March. Capricorns, Saturn is your planet, and so Saturn receives the energy of your sun, and it sort of shows where a lot of the energy is focused. And because your planet moves so slowly, it takes 3 years to go through one sign of the zodiac. It really concentrates one area of your life, typically as the field of action, for 2 to 3 years at a time. The field of action of your life has been your third since 2023. The third sign: communication, voice, education, movement, how you show up, this idea of Saturn being in Pisces. And so Pisces is this space where Saturn needs to learn to have compassion. It needs to rely on its intuition. It needs to sort of be connected to the broader whole. It needs to open up. Pisces, as a water sign, tries to open up. Capricorn, which is either earth or air, depending on whether it's the ruler of Capricorn or the ruler of Aquarius. Then it's Pisces season. So the Pisces sun has joined Saturn along with Mercury, along with, who else is there? I'm totally blanking. I know there's 5 planets at the time of the new moon. So the new moon is going to be on the 27th, Thursday. So the moon will be their sun, Saturn, Mercury, North Node, and there's some other planet Neptune. Always forget about Neptune. That's the thing about Neptune, is that it sort of hangs out in the background. You forget about it. So this next 4 weeks is about, depending on the person, like how you're showing up, how you're using your voice, Are you a teacher, or do you aspire to be a teacher, or are you teaching something in general, or do you need to take a class? Is it about movement? Is it about follow through? But this is something that's really, because it's focusing on the energies of Saturn and Pisces, really trying to get you to focus on, something wants to become real over the next 4 weeks. Something wants to become concrete. And maybe with Mercury conjunct Saturn this week, you need to make some sort of decision, some sort of serious decision. The full moon that's on, the lunar eclipse that's 2 weeks from now, this lunar eclipse will highlight your ninth sign. The ninth sign is what do you believe in, what do you stand for, but it's also this sign that talks about really getting our voice out there, sharing something, teaching something, writing something, broadcasting something. So that's where a lot of the action is happening at this moment. But at the same time, it sort of weaves its way into a story that has been with you over the last 2 years. It's really putting some pressure on you this next 4 weeks, but I would also say it's getting into these bigger existential questions. So use this time to get quiet, to listen to yourself, because that's where you will hear the answers that you need to hear. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is in Pisces along with so many other planets right now. So even though this is not about your season, it kind of in a way is bringing, you're in the mix, because this new moon that we're going to have on the 27th is in the room with Saturn. So Saturn is at the one end of the zodiac, so one end of Pisces. It's nearing the end of Pisces. And then we also have the new moon, which is at 9 degrees of Pisces. So whatever is happening over the next 4 weeks, in a way, it connects to a story that's been present with you over the last 2 years, whether it's money, income, material stability and security, whether it's more philosophical questions about money and income, or even self-worth and value. So for some Aquariuses, the next 4 weeks are really about focusing on money and material matters. And for some Aquariuses, the next 4 weeks are about more of those bigger questions, those more spiritual, existential questions about money and income, or maybe it's both. This new moon period will open up an eclipse period. We have a lunar eclipse in 2 weeks, and then we'll have a solar eclipse 4 weeks from now. We'll talk about the solar eclipse later, but this lunar eclipse will highlight something called your eighth. Going back to the new moon and sort of these bigger existential questions, Pisces is a water sign. So sort of the lens of your intellectual Aquarius living mind has been through Pisces over the past 2 years. In Pisces, the answers are not rational and analytical. They are intuitive, they are spiritual, they are found within. And so with this eclipse to come in 2 weeks, it is activating very deep spaces within. It could be this need to look at yourself, to sort of question things, to really question what truly is of value and of importance to you, to contemplate your life. I know that's a big statement. And the eighth is where we sort of do that inner work, and sometimes even that emotional heavy lifting. So even though it's 2 weeks from now, that eclipse, sort of listen to the deeper emotional questions that are bubbling up, and maybe if they're personal and existential to your life, because this eclipse is pushing on sort of bigger buttons. But the role of the eighth is to sort of create this inner alchemy. The eighth does talk about wealth. It can be material wealth, benefits, property, assets, inheritances, estates. But the eighth also talks about the wealth that we create through our experiences. And that inner wealth is what we take with us to the next life. Finally, Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet. So it is bringing the energy of your sign to a space that talks about home, family, roots, foundation. Where is home and who is home? I've known some Pisces that have moved recently, or it's really about taking the energy and focusing it on either settling down or really replanting yourself someplace. I said this to Sagittarius, I'll say it to you. The four directions of your life, there's just a lot of things happening there right now. The four directions are you, the I, the individual. The second direction is also home and family. The third direction is relationships and connections. And the fourth direction is the role that you play in the world, is your career, is your sense of duty and responsibility on a worldly or external level. With all those four areas being activated at the moment, life might feel a little bit capital L life. Capital L life means that things may be happening that are really marking the timeline, marking the story of the year. This lunar eclipse that we will have in 2 weeks is about relationships for you. It's either about the relationships of your life, a lowercase r relationship, or a capital R relationship. In advance of that lunar eclipse this week, Mercury is conjunct Saturn. And so you get to the 25th, which is tomorrow, and this will take you into the new moon on the 27th, Pisces New Moon. You may be contemplating something. You may need to make a serious decision, because that's the thing of what Saturn does. It helps us to make serious decisions about our life. Maybe you're thinking about the future. Maybe you're thinking about new beginnings and sort of the things that you need to do and the things that you need to commit to in order to make those new beginnings happen. That said, as you can imagine, a Pisces new moon puts this energy of Pisces, or this new beginning and renewal, into your sign. So if it's your birthday, happy birthday. If your birthday is a new moon, so it's the 27th, plus or minus a couple of days, it says that you are bringing this energy of new beginnings into the new year. But regardless of when your birthday is, or even if you are Pisces rising, this gives you the energy of refresh, restart, and this sort of marks the start of your personal year, even if you're Pisces rising. So this is going to possibly be a big month for you. I say that going into March, because there are eclipses, lots of energy of Saturn, and Saturn, as much as I love Saturn, Saturn is Saturn. And Saturn is this planet where we really need to grow up or mature or step into a greater role, or to sort of cut things out, or to really set the time of our life to create responsibilities and duties. So it really depends on who you are, of course, but it's to listen to what is sort of the dominant theme in your life at the moment, and how you can sort of see a thread that maybe has been working its way, not just over the past 6 months, but even over the past 2 years. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of February 24th through March 2nd, 2025. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman, and this has been Empowering Astrology. I appreciate you all. Thank you all for watching every week and giving me give me such kind comments when we meet in our consultations, our client sessions. But that said, you can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. We do this every week. You can book a consultation with me. You can even sign up for my newsletter. And don't forget that I am doing a lunar eclipse webinar. This will be the eclipses of March 2025. This will be at 8 p.m. Eastern on March 5th. It will be recorded for replay for those that can't watch live. It'll be my sort of bigger talk about the eclipses and why they are important, and sort of what are these themes that are going to start to reveal, and especially the ones that are coming up in September, and what this means for you. So thank you all. I will see you all next week.